Hi. I'm starting to enjoy the fact that every night we sort of get together for a little bit of discussion. I have to tell you, I have a sore throat tonight, and I have to travel tomorrow. I'm going to Las Vegas, and so I'm not going to be on very long because I feel like I need to not speak because my throat hurts. So please forgive me for that. But there is something I wanted to talk about tonight, and that is the fact that today is the first day of Black History Month. I can hardly speak. Can you hear me loud enough? I love your synthetic wig. Did you get it on TikTok? My synthetic wig. Can somebody tell me if I'm loud enough? No, it's quiet. I'm having a hard time with my throat. So I'll try. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me well enough? I hope so. Okay. I want to talk about history. So I want to talk about the importance of Black History Month. But first I want to talk about the study of history itself. We're not, I've talked a lot when I've been on the campaign trail about the fact that when it comes to our personal lives, we get real and we think a lot about our own internal processes and what we're going through and the inner dynamics of our lives. But one of the things that I find needs to change, that I think needs to change, is that when it comes to talking about history, when it comes to talking about politics, we go almost numb. We farm out our best thinking so that individually we think about what's real and what's true for me, but we don't think about what's real and true for us. We don't go deep enough when we're thinking about politics, and it's gotten us into a terrible problem because we've sort of farmed out our best. Well, I think that the study of history is an example of that. We learn facts, but we don't think deeply enough about the human experience that lies beyond them. This is why, for me, I've always loved reading biographies. Because if you just tell me the facts, this happened in this year, or this happened in that year, it doesn't mean anything. But when you read a biography, you sort of take it in. You might have heard me talking about an incredible book by Doris Kearns Goodwin called No Ordinary Time, about Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt during the Depression and World War II, experiencing a historical epic through the lives of people and what actually happened in their lives. Living in that historic epic makes us understand ourselves better and makes us understand where we are better. So Black history is a particular example of that. Black history is something that speaks to the totality of the American experience. For Black people, obviously, it's extremely significant. But I don't think we can have a deeper understanding of America. You can't have a deeper understanding of what's happening in the country that all of us inhabit without having a deeper understanding of this particular strain of historical thread and what it has meant for our country. There was a book by a woman named Sue Monk Kidd. And Sue Monk Kidd wrote a book. She's written a lot of different books. The Secret Lives of Bees or Secret Histories, I can't remember. The Mermaid Show, incredible. Different books, Sue Monk Kidd. But there was one book she wrote called The Invention of Wings. And it was about two women who actually lived, two historical figures named the Grimke sisters, who lived in Charleston, South Carolina. And obviously South Carolina was a slave state. But the Grimke sisters were two people who awakened, had that amazing grace experience, and became two leading suffragists and two leading abolitionists. When you read a book like that, you're not just reading there was slavery. You're reading about the experience of slavery through the eyes and the experiences of human beings. Like one of the stories in that book is about these two little girls, one little black girl and one little white girl, and they grew up as best friends. And then at a certain age, like around 4 or so, the little white girl was able to sleep in the bed, and the little black girl had to sleep on the floor at the end of the bed. And the little white girl is asking her parents why. And then at Christmas, when she's 5 or something, the little black girl is given to the little white girl as a Christmas gift. So these little children are starting to understand what's going on here. I remember when I saw the movie Schindler's List. I didn't want to see it because I knew it was going to be devastating, but I almost felt that I owed it. As a Jew, I owed it. And I think as an American, for us to have a deeper understanding of what people have experienced in our country is important. I had a meeting earlier today with some people who are standing for reparations. And they asked me where my support for reparations comes from. And my support for reparations comes from having finally read enough history to understand really what we were talking about here. Because if you just look at it on a superficial level, you see it one way. But if you see it with your heart, you see it another way. And I've experienced I experienced this in my campaign last time, and I experienced it this time as well. I've been talking to rooms full of people, all white people, who, when I first brought up the topic of reparations, wouldn't be very interested. But then I just go through this little 101A thumbnail sketch. 1619, the first slave ships brought over. From 1619 all the way through 1700 into 1800. And then in the early 1800s, the cotton industry revs up in the South, and so it becomes such a huge economic interest, to the point where people want to secede from the Union in order to protect their right to have slaves. When you think about what that meant for almost 250 years, and you read anything, and there have been books like that book, 12 Years a Slave, or Roots, or, there have been some major cultural books, movies, that have given people, that's the purpose of art, that's the purpose of literature, the purpose of reading history, that you take things in more deeply. So you have, at the end of the Civil War, between 4 and 5 million formerly enslaved people promised, a formerly enslaved family of 4, promised 40 acres and a mule, most of them not given it. Even when given it, most of it taken away. And then 100 years after that, another 100 years of institutionalized suppression, black code laws, Jim Crow. So here are people who were forced to come here and then treated like that for 350 years. So when you just read on a page, slaves were first brought to the United States in 1619, Civil War 1861, 1865, followed by 100 years of segregation in the middle at the 1960s, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. All that's good. We need to know that. But when you really let yourself take it in, what millions of people's human experience was. So I just say that because, I used to hear things like, oh, it's Women's History Month or it's Black History Month. And I think there was something to it. I didn't used to. I said, well, what does it even mean? But it does mean something if you say, this is a month when I'm going to think about this. It could be going to a Black History Museum, reading Black literature, maybe you've never read a book by James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. But history is important. Reading a book about Lincoln, about the Civil War, what it meant, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth. That's what's wrong with our society. We're living too above our necks. And it hurts to take it all in. You know, it hurts to really take in the human experience of what people have gone through. But we cause ourselves greater hurt by living a shallow existence. Because when you live a shallow existence, you don't digest anything that's going on. And if you don't digest the past, you have a hard time navigating the present. So I just wanted to say that about it being Black History Month. That, you know, we take things in at different parts of our lives. James Doty, this neurosurgeon at Stanford, he talks about how they used to think that the brain was the intelligence center of the body. But now we know that the heart and the brain, there's like a highway between them. And that the heart and the brain are in a kind of partnership as the intelligence center of the body. And I think in the 21st century, in order to deal with the problems that confront us, and in order to transform the problems that confront us, we are going to have to think in terms of the brain and the heart. The brain and the heart being partnered in the intelligence not only of the body, but of human civilization itself. So when you're thinking of Black history, don't just think of the facts of what has happened, whether it's through literature or reading historical literature or reading a really good history book. Allow yourself to take in something about the human experience in a way that you had not before, and it will change you. That's what I found. And that's why when I came to the issue of reparations, you might go to Marianne2024.com, look at my thing about reparations in there, my question about reparations, my issue, my video, and hopefully it takes you someplace deeper. Yes, I support a ceasefire. Of course I stand with the Palestinians. I stand with humanity. I stand with a two-state solution. I stand equally for the peace, security, sovereignty of both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians. People who exalt the rights of one at the expense of the other, that to me does not pave the way forward. What paves the way forward is a path where both peoples get to live safely and with sovereignty. I'm looking. I don't see my glasses up here. That was very stupid. Future Politics is a group of leaders. Do you have any good books on American history? Yes. Well, the one that I was talking about before was No Ordinary Time by Doris Kearns Goodwin. It's just incredible, and it reads like a novel. And you will learn so much. Will you be on the ballots right now in 33 states? Do you condemn the Israeli government leaders? I have made this very, very clear that Bibi Netanyahu, I'm not a fan of Bibi Netanyahu. And of course, I hope that you condemn Hamas as well. I mean, this thing with you condemn them or them, there's a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, God does not give you victory in battle, he lifts you above the battlefield. To really support anyone in that region is to support everyone in that region. But no, I'm not a fan of Bibi Netanyahu. And he would know that. He knows that now. Thank you, thank you. Current makeup of the Supreme Court. Current makeup of the Supreme Court is very corporatist. There's a book by Sheldon Whitehouse. I can't remember exactly the name of it. He's a U.S. Senator. And it talks about the strategy over the last few decades to turn the court into what it is now, which is in far too many cases a kind of arm of the American corporate matrix. Decision after decision having to do more with supporting corporate power than supporting the most enlightened interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. America's about, the government, theoretically, is to broker individual liberty and a concern for the common good. And certainly that individual liberty should include financial, economic liberty, but not at the expense of the common good. And the common good is about the public sphere, and individual liberty is about the private sphere. And we've gone so far into governmental support of private economic liberty at this point as to be dismissive almost of the public good. Spoken of in practical terms, more interested in the ability of big food companies to make money, even when doing so is allowing a carcinogen in the food. Okay? Let's say a big food company, and this is how it happens in this country. So a big food company has discovered that they could put a certain ingredient in a box of food that would increase the shelf life. Increasing the shelf life then increases the profits for the company, profits for their stockholders. That's unfettered capitalism. That's just profits first. In many countries, because that's why you have a Food and Drug Administration, and you can look this up. Look on the internet about the ingredients in a ketchup bottle in the United States versus the ingredients in a ketchup bottle in Canada, let's say. And you'll see how different it is. How an American company will be forbidden in other countries from putting certain ingredients in the food that they're allowed to put here. That's what it means when you allow the economic liberty to be placed before the common good. And that's the ship that we have to right. What are your thoughts on... I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses. How are you going to go after big corporations? Well, so this is the deal. There's a matrix of corporate power, and they act, the reason they're often called a corporatocracy is because they are a modern iteration of the old aristocracy. And an aristocracy, let's say in Old England, said that this particular class of people, they have more rights. They have more rights to the land. They have more rights to wealth. They have more rights to wealth creation. And other people were basically their serfs, right? Right? Okay. So right now, the institutionalized greed of insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big chemical, big food, big agribusiness, chemical companies, as I already said, gun manufacturers, big oil, in some cases big banks, and defense contractors. They have so much power. There are so many laws passed giving them subsidies, giving them huge tax breaks. And now, with the Citizens United Supreme Court decision giving them unlimited influence over our elections because of the money that they can give, right? Like when I ran in New Hampshire, for 4 days before I was running, there were all these TV ads for Dean Phillips that you look down at the bottom, paid for by. That's what those big independent expenditures are, right? So at this point, those who have huge amounts of money are able to supersede just the votes of regular people. So these huge corporations and the moneyed interests that they represent have so much power that we're not actually functioning as a democracy at this point. We are functioning as an oligarchy. And that means a small group of people who have more power than everyone else. You're going back to aristocracy. That's why they call it a corporatocracy, because of the power that they are able to exert, such as the carcinogens in your food, such as the toxins in the air, such as the ramping up of fossil fuel. The only reason we don't have universal health care, improved Medicare for everyone, is because of the institutionalized greed of insurance companies. They're not necessary. We don't even need that middleman. The only reason over 1 million people are rationing their insulin in this country is because of the institutionalized greed of the pharmaceutical companies. How do I do it? Well, first of all, the president has the power to appoint who heads these agencies. So we've had situations where we've had presidents who would say, the person to run the agriculture department will be someone who comes from big agribusiness. No! The agriculture department should be filled with people, regenerative agriculture, carbon sequestration, people who are actually repairing the earth after the damage that was done by big agribusiness. I'm going to tell you a story. When I ran last time, I met a mayor in South Carolina. And he said, you know, before the 1980s, what we had here in rural South Carolina, he said, we have farmers, and they'd go into their local bank one year, and they'd say, my yield wasn't good this year. And the farmer and the banker, they knew them. They were friends. Your local banker knew you as a person. And so the local banker was very likely to say to the farmer, we understand. You didn't have an easy time this year. You'll pay us next year. But then when Ronald Reagan came in, when Reaganomics began, it was all about moving the power into the hands of these huge corporate entities. There was actually a Secretary of Agriculture. It became the Department of Agribusiness. It was supposed to be the Department of Agriculture, who said, go big or go home. So this is what would start to happen. Because big, they're in cahoots. Big banks, big agribusiness. So these big banks come in and they gobble up these little banks so that there are fewer and fewer and fewer local banks. So this year, the farmer comes in. He wants to talk to the banker about the fact my yield wasn't good this year. But the little banker has been bought out. It's some big bank, and the big bank doesn't even, the people who are running things, they don't even know that farmer. They don't know that state necessarily. So when the farmer comes in and says, my yield wasn't good, instead of a local banker saying, I understand, you'll pay us next year, says, well, listen, you don't have any choice. You're just going to have to sell your farm to this big agribusiness conglomerate that doesn't even live here, doesn't know this state, doesn't know your land. And that farmer ends up working for a company. Now, that farmer is very likely to be farming land that belonged to his parents and his parents and his parents. And he was likely to have been taught deep things about the land and deep things about food and deep things about agriculture. And all of a sudden he's working for some big company who sends him instructions. And those instructions are often to do things to the land that his father and his grandfather told him, do not do. Because they knew the ancient secrets. They knew not to monocrop. They knew not to treat the soil a certain way. But this big agribusiness is only looking for profit, and short-term profit, which amounted to laying waste to the land in many of these cases. We had farmers who committed suicide. And that's what's happened to our society. Everything's become big and careless of humanity. We need to go back to humanitarian principles rather than short-term economic principles. Economics matters, but you can't say, well, if corporations make money, all will be good. We tried that. But if you say all that's good with people, you start from there. You help people thrive, then the economy will thrive. Why is that? Because when we're at our look at any Montessori school, look at any kindergarten. Kids are naturally creative. People want to produce. People have dreams. And so if we just help each other just thrive, people want to produce. That's one of the reasons why I have a problem with these college loans. Gen Z and young millennials, the youth of America, have the same dreams, the same exuberance, the same creative juices, the same productivity, the same energy as any generation. And what public policy should do is set people up To spread your wings, the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence says that that's government's job to secure those things. We should be setting our kids up to win, not cutting them off at the knees, which is what those college loan debts do. And make no mistake about it, until the 1970s, we had tuition-free college and tech school. We had it in University of California, University of Texas, University of Florida. So, of course, it's one thing that keeps coming up here. Yes, I agree. We should have a ceasefire now in Gaza. So what we should do is set people up. All public policy should be, how does this help someone thrive? So if I'm your president, I'm sitting in the Oval Office, and a certain policy is being discussed. My first question is not how does short-term profit get made for stockholders. First, how does this help a child thrive? How does this help people eat? How does this help people have a roof above their head? How does this help people get health care? How does this help people pay for child care? How does this help people thrive? And then you have more people who are thriving, more people creating, more people producing, happier people. Happier people are better employers. Happier people are better employees. People's lives are falling apart in this country. That's what I want to hear a president say, and that's why I want to be president, to acknowledge that. 39% of Americans now say that they regularly skip meals in order to pay their rent. And we have half of America's renters saying that they can't afford their rents. You've probably heard me with all the statistics. Millions of people with these college loan debts. I can't even imagine being in my 20s carrying tens of thousands of dollars of debt. Debt is crippling. Medical debt, it's crippling. We should cancel it. And all of this so that insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, we have an $88 billion medical debt, and last year alone, the profit of the top 5 pharmaceutical companies was $80 billion. So we need a president, in my opinion, say that stops now. We can't continue in that direction. It's been for the last 50 years a $50 trillion transfer of wealth away from the bottom 90% of Americans. Back in the 1970s, the average American could afford a car and a yearly vacation and a home, a house. One salary could afford to support a family of 4, and they could send their kids to college, and one parent could stay home with the kids if they wanted to. I know for younger people that sounds like just some kind of fantasy. It was 50 years ago. And then slashing taxes for the very, very richest, demonizing humans, not humans, demonizing unions, huge corporate subsidies. We just did everything we could to make it easier for those who already have a lot to make more, and harder for everybody else to even make it at all. And that's where we are now. And if you think either Trump's not going to fix that. Trump, the main jewel of the Trump presidency was that 2017 tax cut, where $2 trillion tax cut, where 83 cents of every dollar went to the top earners. Now, you should repeal that. We should put back in the middle class tax cut part, because that was good. Biden had the House and the Senate for 2 years. Why didn't they? So we need real change, bold, fundamental economic reform. We do not just need another incremental change here and there. We need an economic U-turn, we need a new beginning, and we need a season of repair. Okay, I'm going to see about a couple more, and then I'm going to go rest my voice, because I have to fly tomorrow. I'm going to Nevada. Saturday is the South Carolina primary. And Nevada is Tuesday. Chemicals in our food, cancer-causing chemicals in our food. It's exactly what I was saying. To regulate these things. And there are tremendous forces, chemical companies, food companies, that fight that resist that. But you need a president who isn't giving into that. And that's why, if you vote for Trump, the Republicans seem to think all that corporate power is just the way to go. But we need a president who more than does what we can and tries to have it both ways sometimes. And it's a system. It's not just a human being that we're arguing against here. It's a whole system that's very, very corrupted. And it's corrupted because of all of this corporate influence. That corporate influence is by people that Franklin Roosevelt called the economic royalists. And they would come at me just like they came at him. He said, I welcome their hatred. I can't say about anyone I welcome their hatred, but to stand up for them. Okay, I saw a couple of questions I'm going to answer before I go. One was, what do I think about Bernie Sanders? And of course, I've been deeply inspired by Bernie Sanders. I can't even remember what the other ones. I'm so sorry, this is going so fast. Housing crisis, please look at go to Marianne2024.com and look at my issues section. There are so many things there, and there's our housing policy. Housing in this country at this point is beyond crisis. It's an emergency, and it should be treated as such. We need 5 to 10 million units of social housing, and we need to get rid of exclusionary zoning laws. We need to have a tenant's bill of rights. We need to have a tax on all these real estate companies that are coming in and turning housing into a commodity. Tax them so high that they're not doing that anymore. It's not worth it to them. Or if that does not stop them, pass a law where if somebody at market value could afford to live in that house, the person who wants to live in it gets first dibs. 600,000 unhoused people on any given night in this country. And many of those people work full time. Work full time. That is unacceptable. This is a moral issue for me. Poverty is a moral issue in a country like this. It is unnecessary. We have a permanent underclass, and it is unnecessary. And it is because of the way we spend our money and who we tax. Taxes are the main issue here. We make it so much easier for people who already have a lot of money. The money's just been sucked up to the top. And it's at the expense of other people even having a chance to survive. And when this all started, we were told that this would be good because all these extremely wealthy people would be job creators. But their business model is not job creation. It's job elimination and worker exploitation. And it's not about nice people versus nice people, not nice people. There are very, very nice, lovely, very wealthy people in America. Not every rich person is a greedy bastard. This is not about nice people versus not nice people, but it's about systems that are economically unjust. And a certain level of economic injustice is now so baked into the cake, is so the status quo in America, that if we continue voting for the status quo, it won't really change. And that's why we have to disrupt it, and we have to smash the machine that keeps it in place. And any machine, including political machines that protect the status quo, if you vote for a status quo candidate in South Carolina on Saturday or Nevada on Tuesday, we are continuing to just support a system that is making it way too difficult for way too many people. So, what do I think about DACA recipients? They should just be able to become citizens and live their lives. And I interviewed a woman named Erica Marquez yesterday. I hope you saw those interviews. They were on TikTok and I think partly on Twitter today as well. Okay, guys, my throat is sore tonight and I have to travel tomorrow. So I hope that you will forgive me. It was nice having these few minutes to talk to you. And I see I'm sorry I don't have my glasses on. God bless you. Good night. Go to Marianne2024.com and enjoy yourself. Look around. Go to all my social media. Spread the word. And drop in a buck if you can. Thank you so much. God bless you.